So the problem right now is that preparing strong cross-examination questions allows you to tell a compelling story. And the important piece about that is it's all about persuasion. So if you can persuade people to believe in you, then you can win your case. And by extension, be successful in your career, gain respect of your peers, and it provides a lot of intrinsic rewards.
Okay, Jenushika, welcome back to the podcast. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you for having me, Ravi.
Yeah, so we were saying this is the second attempt at recording this. First time I ended up in a failure. Mm-hmm. No fault of our own, but Wi-Fi. I don't know about you, but I've been having huge Wi-Fi issues in connecting online. Like everything seems super overloaded. How are you doing?
Honestly, I have the router down here with me, so that that used to happen, but doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah.
But there's 6 people in this house, so a lot of people using the Wi-Fi, so that's why I just went the additional step.
Yeah, I got you. But it definitely makes a challenge for especially running remote companies. I live in a new area. Maybe that's the reason why. I don't know what's going on. But jumping into that, Aleri. I'm going to get it.
Yeah, you got it.
Aleri, right? Okay.
Aleri.
We met on Clubhouse, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember for some reason, what you were saying was compelling, and I went and checked out your website. Mm-hmm. And your website just looks so clean and polished. And me and Travis Rednam from Knowledge Hook, we were on that Clubhouse together. You came in, and while you were talking, we were on our chat group just talking back and forth, like, yo, this looks like a really clean product, right? And I remember you telling me, you're fresh out of university and you jumped into your first startup, and I'm like, it just hit me. Like, it actually motivated me to go and improve our own website because, we've been running for 2 years on ad hoc, just a random setup. I want to jump into that polishment and refinement that got you there. Because there's a journey. We started last time the first attempt to jump into it, but let's kickstart it and blow through it, right? So
yeah,
how'd you meet your co-founder and how'd you start this problem?
Yeah, so my co-founder and I met in one of my last internships for school. So for school, you had to do 5 internships. So my final one, I worked at RBC, and I worked in a project management position. And on the team was a developer named David Paul. So we got along really well. And one of the things that stood out to me about him was how entrepreneurial he was. So we quickly related on that base because we both knew we wanted to start something. And then we tried different things, but then, this specific problem came to us because his father is a lawyer, and he brought up the problem of how hard it is to prepare for cross-examination. And so, we just thought we'd give it a try on addressing the issue. And we figured we had the perfect, to start off, we had exactly what we need to cover. We had one developer, we had a subject matter expert, which was the attorney. And then we had me, and I'm really good at communications and writing communications, oral too. So we just figured, we have a good match. Let's just kind of give this a go.
Yeah. Okay. So you guys just jump right in. So you finished your co-op at RBC, right? And you decided, you saw this problem and you want to jump in. And the problem came to you from a senior lawyer, right?
Yeah. Which is interesting because usually people actively pursue starting a company. But for me, it the opportunity approached me.
Yeah, so that's a different unique sense, but same time, I think what you stumbled on is a very cool kind of formula, right? A lot of times, we on the podcast, we actually talk about this. Usually, founders fall into a type of spectrum, right?
Yeah.
On one side is visionary-led founders, right? You see this vision of what the world could be, and it's you're haunted by it. It just drags you towards that, right?
Yeah.
And on the other side is more. Wow, I forgot the word even after 2 years of saying it. On the other side of the spectrum is more executive types, right? Where you're working in a role, or you have some kind of professional training in somewhere, and you have deep knowledge in a field, and you see a strategic gap, something that you can jump into, and you systematically build for that. Your case is kind of unique where the problem kind of given to you and you
Yeah.
guys decided, hey, we want to form a company around this. Right. So let's talk a bit more of the problem set, right? So you want to create a collaborative environment for the legal industry. Can you walk us through the problems and what were the solutions there at the time and how's yours different?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so the problem right now is that preparing strong cross-examination questions allows you to tell a compelling story. And the important piece about that is it's all about persuasion. So if you can persuade people to believe in you, then you can win your case. And by extension, be successful in your career, gain respect of your peers, and it provides a lot of intrinsic rewards, but ultimately your career depends on winning cases. Now, the problem right now is that there's no clear-cut method to prepare questions. And so lawyers, especially lawyers who are new to the game, they have to really forge their own method. So they're reading really thick books. They're trying to observe members in their peer. At the same time, they struggle with the pressures of trying to appear competent when they don't know how to do this really complicated and abstract task. And I can't necessarily be open about that either. So what we created is a cloud notebook. It's kind of like one notebook, and it has 6 different pages. Each page is a step to prepare cross-examination questions. So it provides a clear-cut, step-by-step method. That's one aspect. The other aspect is that it brings together kind of the best of both worlds of cloud technology and litigation best practices. So before, lawyers were either using pen and paper, physically printing out, pictures of text or their evidence and trying to keep it together in a physical file, or they might use Microsoft Word, but they'd have to open up so many different windows and tabs. You feel like it's extremely overwhelming and hard to integrate into one another. So Aleri allows you to upload and keep together an unlimited amount of files and essentially eliminates the need to use any other platform. So all you need to create cross-examination questions is this one software. Anywhere you have internet access.
Yeah, I mean, we're comparing it to a Notion for lawyers, right? Notion being the startup. We use Notion a lot, and it's this great tool to create your own like internal wiki. You have all this information there. You can have all these links. We can use that to organize how this company, our information is structured, right? Like our knowledge base is structured, and it's very different from having a bunch of folders on like a cloud drive somewhere where you're clicking through and trying to look at things. This is a way of interlinking information. Let's talk about it from the legal industry, right? Like, how did you do any field research? How did you figure out this was a scalable solution?
So what we basically did is we just talked to a bunch of lawyers. So a lot of networking on LinkedIn, people that we thought would be the cream of the crop, like people who would love our product. And so we first determined a persona, and then we went after those people on LinkedIn, and we basically asked them if this was a problem that actually needs to be solved. And just talk to them like, okay, like what are your problems with cross-examination? And just diving deeper and deeper and continuing to ask why. And then from there, we kind of we had a beta in the making. So we would refine the beta and offer it for free and use that to kind of garner feedback. But it was surprising. A lot of people are really willing to just give free advice.
You can definitely feed off those advice. So let's talk about how the technology stack works, right? Your co-founder is the CTO. He operates the actual technology. You do the marketing communications. How did it go from, okay, here are problems the lawyers have to here's a technology solution? How'd you guys go? How'd you build that?
Yeah, so it started off when I was in school. So first we kind of just drew it out on paper and we saw how that would look like. And then it was basically the process of trial and error. So we would just try a bunch of different reiterations. We must have changed the actual app like 50 times. And so really it's just like try things, reiterate, get feedback, try things again, reiterate, just continuously talking to people and then making sure that it's meeting people's needs.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So you had this iterative process of learning and developing the product. Where are you at currently?
In what sense?
In product development, are you completed like a beta test? Are you at alpha? Have you launched? Are you paid customers?
Oh, okay, yeah. So we're not in beta anymore. We've launched and we have paid customers. So that's kind of where we're at right now. So we have like our product ready.
Perfect. Okay. I keep having to mute my mic because my dog's barking upstairs.
Oh, that's your dog? I thought I have a dog too. I thought that was my dog.
Yeah, this mic is super powerful. It just picks it up. Yeah, I'm like in this shielded studio downstairs, but like still noises get through. Yeah, so going to that, I know you have this product now. You're talking to customers. Mm-hmm. How's it been? Like, you work with a few incubators. You went through a few incubator programs you mentioned. Mm-hmm. Can you list them off? Like, how was that process?
Yeah. So right off the bat, we had support because we are part of 2 accelerator startup incubators. And so there's one in Waterloo called the Accelerator Center. We get a lot of mentorship from them. They have 12 mentors, so a lot of people to get feedback from. And then we're also part of DMZ's Legal Innovation Zone, so it's their legal branch. Yep. And so they also provide support too. They have something really cool called CEO Circle. So every 2 weeks, all of us get together and they have keynote presentations, and it's basically a lunch and learn. So we have a lot of mentors to ask advice from. And then early on, like right when we started, we also made sure to get advisors as well. So we have a few advisors from other legal tech companies, like they've started their own legal tech companies as well. Or we also have one from a large firm in Toronto to help us out with like the legal stuff and to figure out the direction that we should go for just on the legal aspect, like what lawyers are looking for. So we have a bunch of people to kind of be our soundboard and be our mentors. So it helps out a lot.
Cool. Yeah. So, I mean, these mentorships that come out of these programs, they're really specific, right? So AC Center is great with especially the technology-led side and get with communications. They get a lot of attention. The Legal Innovation Zone or Ryerson, they're really specific. They're the first like legal focused like accelerator I think out there, and through them, there's a lot of like legal firms, a part of their network. So it's a great place to grow. Would you say like you would join more programs, or would you like are you done taking programs? Like that's always a question for startups.
I think that we're done because the thing is, I mean, when you join another accelerator startup, it's a commitment, and so you can't just like passively be a part of it. You should really be going to their events and talking to their mentors because it's a mutual relationship. And one is I feel like we have like an ample amount of support and mentorship. And two, I don't want to spread myself too thin. I think David and I are really busy as is. And so like I don't want to join another accelerator startup and then not be present.
Gotcha. What about like if it's like Y Combinator, who helps you raise money?
Yeah, well, I don't think we could turn down Y Combinator.
Okay. Yeah, so one of the things we were also talking about before was like, how information is easier to move through, right? Toronto's tech scene has really boomed, and like the companies coming out are booming with the scene, right? You talk about the specific programs that are available now, the mentorship, the support. Are you raising capital? Are you trying to get more clients? Like, what's the process there?
Right now, our focus is to grow, although definitely our goal is to raise capital 100%. We're absolutely interested in that.
Definitely. So speaking of that and moving forward, before we talked about, before we jumped on the podcast, you mentioned something about pricing. That was really interesting. How you're currently just adjusted your pricing.
Yeah.
Pricing is such an interesting thing for startups, right? Because especially when you're in a novel field, or if you don't have competitors, or if your competitors don't exactly do what you do, you don't really have a baseline for what you should price your product at. How have you been previously been able to price your product, and what are you thinking of now?
So previously it was around like $50 for the low plan USD.
Is that for a whole firm?
No, so it's per user per month.
User.
So every user would be another fee. Although we offer discounts if it's enterprise, but and we also offer yearly discounts. So if they choose to buy it for the whole year, they save 20%. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, recently we increased our prices just because I think that pricing is also a psychological thing. $50 is extremely affordable for lawyers. And so we figured if we up the price, they could definitely still afford it. And the other thing is, I don't think initially when it was only $50, people saw the value of it. Like, it's a really valuable tool. It's worth way more than $50. And we threw in softwares that are, like, for example, timeline software. That's usually $50 on its own. And all it does is create timelines. So it's super valuable. I think even right now it's underpriced, but we just increased it because I think that it's a psychological element. If people see that it costs more, they'll kind of connect the dots and be like, oh, it must be worth more. Two, it's good for business. You raise the price, you need less customers technically. And three, I don't think it's really stretching the lawyer's budget. It won't break their bank. So it made sense to increase the price at this point.
What has the feedback been from increasing prices?
Positive, like nobody's really asked us for discounts or kind of said it's too much. Actually, because it was so positive, we didn't really feel the need to kind of go back. So far it was good. Before, when we were still in the beta process, we used to ask like how much lawyers think we should charge. And it was around the price that we're currently at. So we figured, okay, this is like a fair bet. Cool.
So you raise these prices, and you have a great model now. What's next? What's the near future?
The new feature?
What's the next? What's the near future? Is it just scaling? You're gonna focus on growth and moving forward. New feature sets coming out, hiring people.
Yeah, so we're just focused on growth. So we're definitely going to use more Facebook ads, more Google ads, basically just expand. Something we'll probably do more of is getting on the phone with clients and or prospective clients, just being super aggressive in sales. I think that before maybe we were being more passive, but now that I look at it, like I don't want to look back down the line and be like, oh, I could have tried harder and I just didn't because I was nervous to go on the phone. And so I feel like now I'm definitely doing the more aggressive sales approach. I think in this phase, it's going to be like 80% outbound, 20% inbound. And then as we grow, that will change. But what I see Aleri kind of becoming is definitely growing. I think that in the future, it can even be an educational tool, something that is used in law school to teach students. I think that there's opportunities for us to start our own legal tech events to kind of become like Clio and not just become a product, but a community. I really want to see us partner with associations like law bar associations. And I see us really expanding into the States. I just feel like they have a different culture with technology. They're a lot more open to new tech, and it just makes sense to kind of go over there. But right now it's just aggressive growth.
Cool. Going to talking about growth and going across nations, right? Like, what is that? Is there in the legal industry any data protections we need to worry about? In healthcare, there's a particular law called HEPA and PHIPA between Canada and the US. Luckily, it's very similar, so it's easy for tech companies across borders. How does it look like in the legal field? For American legal companies, do you need to have like? Go ahead.
No, sorry, you go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, do you need to have any special like any server set up in the States? Like, is there any holes you got to jump over?
Yeah, so I think there has to be servers set up in certain locations. So our CTO, like David Paul, he has that set up. So that's correct. Honestly, I'm not the best person to speak about that, but I definitely know that your servers have to be located in a specific area.
Yeah, this is something I learned pretty recently as well, right? Like about how going across nations has changed due to data privacy laws. GDPR kind of kicked it off in Europe. But now, like if you're a company or a startup, need to operate in different localities, the bar has actually gone up in difficulty, right? Because you have to make sure you're complying to local data protections. There was this company we were working with out of Italy, and they wanted to come to North America. And for them to come to Canada and the United States, they had to create 5 different subsidiaries, each one, and in different regions in North America, and each one maintaining a separate service supply for that region. And it's just like, oh my God, like that's a lot of work to do, right?
Yeah.
To enter a new region. Who's been do you have a particular advisors on your board now advising you, or is it mostly these mentors from accelerators? Like, how are you navigating the data side and the technology side?
The data side. So David Paul, he's completely in charge of it. He's really knowledgeable about this area. Like,
Gotcha.
honestly, it's not my area expertise, but he's super smart. Like, he's very, very knowledgeable about these things. And then also, yeah, we have a couple lawyers on the team too, to make sure we're not doing anything illegal. And, both the accelerators, actually, no, one of the accelerator centers, the Waterloo one, provides us a legal team too. So we can always bounce off them if we, just to make sure everything's compliant. But yeah, definitely, like, there are data compliance things that we have to watch out for, especially for enterprise sales. They're actually difficult because they have even more. So yeah, definitely we have to, keep our eyes peeled for that. But we have lots of people to help out with that too.
Cool. Let's talk about your development during all this process, right? Like generally, one of my favorite quotes is by Satish Bala, who came on the podcast a few times. He made this post about how startups are like, or any kind of business, launching a business, being a founder, it's a personal growth engine disguised as like a business, right? Where like you go through a lot of development. Personally, you learn new skills, it forces you to learn new things, go past your comfort zone, all that. Yeah. How's your journey been being a founder?
I think that for me, it's been a really interesting experience, especially because I think something that made this really possible for me was actually the pandemic. Being after I graduated, like my parents expected me to go the traditional route and get a 9-to-5. But actually, because of the pandemic, they were like, okay, like try this out, see what happens. And so I tried it. And to be honest, I thought it would be a lot more glamorous than it actually was. Because right now, like being an entrepreneur, it's so glamorized, right? But in reality, I'm like, talking to people, doing sales on the phone, doing aggressive like LinkedIn kind of outbound, a lot of like things that are not fun. And so I think that what I've learned most is like perseverance. And recently I had an epiphany, and it was really just about like, if you want to do anything in life, like any kind of goal, the biggest thing you have to get over is the fear of failure. So you have to be okay with failing. And so I realized that like a lot of people, I think what gets in their way is they're just so afraid of failing. And so I'm trying to reprogram my mind to try and like almost enjoy when people say no to me. I don't know, that sounds weird, but I try to be like, okay, yeah, that's awesome. Cause that's one more person down until I get to someone who's going to say yes to me. And I just try not to be afraid of failing. I'm like, okay, like if this goes bust, like even this podcast, the first time that we did it, because it's the second time, I was nervous. I was really nervous going into it. And then I just thought, like, you know what? So what if it like turns to shit? Like, what's the worst that's going to happen, right? And it's just like, I guess reprogramming your mind to not care, because I think that we have like, as humans, we have this enormous potential, and usually we only tap into a fraction of it. And I don't want to wake up someday and be like, oh, I never realized my dreams because I was scared. So right now I'm really trying to reprogram my brain to be like, don't be afraid of failing. And that's kind of like my mantra that I say every day internally.
No, that's really good. That's really fantastic, actually. That kind of mentality, right? Like, you're absolutely right. Like, being a founder is like overly dramatized now. It's like it's a cultural thing. Somebody once said that like entrepreneurship is like like modern day hippie culture. It's like just like hippies with the counterculture back then. It was cool to like go against everything out against the curve. Entrepreneurship is now like the counterculture. It's like the cool new thing. Everybody wants to say founder in their bio. Everyone wants to be like, oh, I'm working on this.
Yeah.
And I think that it really helps you a lot because more people understand that you're doing this. How's it been from like your network, like from your friends, from family, colleagues? Like, are they saying like, oh, like you should be working somewhere else, or like, are they supporting you? Do you see this as like a project that's like, it's cute that you're doing this, good job, but like, when is life going to start? Like there's a lot of feedback that that the community around founders give that kind of get in your head.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. How do you deal with that? How do you navigate through that?
Okay, so initially I had a lot of pushback. I don't think anyone, not a single person, encouraged me to do this. And so, except for, my co-founders. And so initially, I was like kind of put off, but I realized, like, especially with family, you have to show and not tell. And so, I think I just, like, I did go against it, even though they're like, oh, stability and pay off your OSAP loan and, like buy a house and do all the things that we're told to do. Like all of that is kind of, you're being risky, right? And so, I don't know. I just learned to tune it out. Like I'm pretty good at tuning things out. And, I learned to just like, I know internally that this is what I want to do, and I know that I'll be successful at it. And so it's just about like having the confidence in yourself and being able to tune out other people. And I just kind of honestly, not right now it's different because we made progress. We're making money. We've grown our team. And so we've gotten a little bit of funding. And so it's easier. And actually right now, I do have a lot of support. I've the complete support of my family, which is really nice. But I think initially you just really have to believe in yourself and not get triggered.
Yeah. I mean, personal faith it definitely goes a long way. And that ability, what you're talking about, the ability to go against the naysayers. One of my earlier guests during COVID was actually the host of a podcast called Screw the Naysayers. And this idea in entrepreneurship, the idea in entrepreneurship is it's pretty founded in this, right? The idea that you got to be able to like shield yourself from all the negativity that can come into it, because the journey's up and down. Right. Not only is you have your people around you looking at you for personal growth, you have people who work with you, your colleagues looking at, you for strength. But also like, things go up, like, a client signs and then they say, hey, there's not a time for now. Like there's like up and down journeys that you go through. And it's really an emotional journey and it's very taxing. All right. There's a lot of burnout, like entrepreneurial burnout is very different from like other burnouts because it's very emotionally driven. Right, because there's so much like emotions, deep emotions behind it. So, how do you deal with burnout, and how do you deal with keeping your mind clear?
Honestly, I like That's a good question, because burnout is something you almost feel daily. Like even earlier today, I was like, oh God, I have no energy. And I'm trying all these things. Like I sleep for 8 hours. I cut out coffee. So I only drink tea. I know tea is caffeinated too, but I'm trying to increase my water intake. I don't know. That's a good question, because the thing is, like, you're right. It's so up and down. Like you can feel really, really motivated. And then other days you can feel really shitty and just, like, I'm not going to lie. Like, there have been times where I'm like, oh, is this working? Like a lot of self-doubt, and like, you risk a lot. But I mean, how I get through it, I feel like for me, I just think like, okay, well, if there is ever a time period in my life where I wanted to be risky and entrepreneurial, it's right now. Like I'm in my 20s. I don't have any commitments. I'm not married. I don't have children. I live at home. I don't have to pay rent. Like it's actually a really great time for me to try out something like this. So I don't know. I just kind of keep my head up, and you just have to realize when you're feeling bad, it's just like temporary, and you have to try and not get into the negative mindset, because as soon as you do, it's a spiral. So something that I learned from Jay Shetty was when you're feeling like badly about yourself, try to shift to gratitude, because when you're holding a thought of gratitude, it's impossible to be holding another thought of something else. And so like just trying to focus on gratitude and getting through that moment without like spiraling into it.
It's amazing like how much conversation about entrepreneurship has shifted towards this kind of thinking about managing burnout and managing and mindset and things like that, because it's like if you look at all the best leaders, like from Steve Jobs, Tim Cook to Jeff Bezos, all of them like have the similar quotes where they're talked about the secret to success is persistence. Or just staying in the game long enough, right? Just like getting through the hurdles, taking the hits, and moving forward. And part of that is just developing strength and that ability to think long term, right?
You
to
have
be long
to.
term.
Yeah, you have to. Honestly, it's 100% mind over matter, because the way you view your life is your life. So you have to just like, you have to rewire your brain.
For me, like I get a lot of that content from Gary Vee. He talks very positive light. Gratitude, is the key to everything. Be happy, be kind, right? Like, because it feeds into this, right? Like one of the things, you got to love about the internet is that it shooed away the ability to screw people over. Like everybody comes with almost kind of like everyone kind of has like a reputation to maintain, right? Like if someone has done something negative, you can leave a bad review in their business. You can write a personal review or mark about it on LinkedIn or on Instagram. Like there are ways to check and balances built based on reputation, right? Because everyone's connected. So now it's like people are trying to be more genuine with each other through the internet, like even though like there's a lot of toxic negativity, I found like founder culture, like if you reach out to mentors, if you reach out to the people and you talk to them, people are so willing to transact, especially during COVID right now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I find that too. Absolutely. People in general, like I feel like initially I used to be afraid of asking for help or, just networking, but I feel like a lot of people in general, it's human tendency, I guess, to want to help people. So, I definitely find that in founder culture for sure. But yeah, you listen to Gary Vee?
I love Gary Vee. Gary Vee's the reason we're doing this right now.
What kind of... sorry, go on.
I was like, Gary Vee yelled at me like on my Instagram feed for about 1.5 years. Every time you see a Gary Vee video, he's always yelling, right? Like that's one of his main things, especially back in 2017 to 2019, he was yelling at the camera. Yeah. That was one of his things. And you scroll through Instagram and suddenly his face is there yelling. He's like, are you making content? How much content are you making per day? Right? It's like right now, it's a content game. Like he's yelling at people to get him content.
You're right. Yeah.
Especially back then. And I was an avid fan of like Joe Rogan. And between the two, I'm like, I love listening to this content. This medium of podcasting is coming up. This guy's yelling at me to make content because it's a way to like get people to know you. So it's what motivated you to get to this. And that's one of the interesting things is that, my knowledge, the way I acquire knowledge has shifted completely in the last 5 years. I stopped books completely. I don't read anything. I don't read blogs.
Oh, really?
Everything is audio. Everything is podcast now. I listen to about 6 hours of content per day now because I can multitask.
Yeah.
If I'm doing something, or if I'm working, I'm always listening to something on the side, and I've trained myself to multitask and listen, and it's become such an effective way for at least me. Like my co-founder Henry, he can't. He's got to read, right, to find information. He can't, he can't do the audio format, but because I've developed that ability, I find that nowadays, like, it's so much easier to obtain information. Right. So I'm seeing this rise of like the audio platforms, right? Like you're literally like, when you make this kind of content, people listen to it with headphones on and you're inside their heads talking about ideas and talking about knowledge and things like that. Right.
Yeah. You're inside their heads. Yeah.
Literally.
No,
right.
Yeah, you are. Yeah. But then don't you find it hard to retain the information? Like, do you take notes while you listen to podcasts or anything?
So here's my biggest fallacy is that I'm not good at facts, figures, and numbers. Like, I don't memorize things, right? What I'm looking is concepts, strategies, like core ideas, right? So for instance, yesterday I listened to a podcast, and it was a guy who's came on from Twitter, talking about Twitter Spaces and like how Twitter's new products can be launched in. And they were talking about how the creator economy, Twitter has about like 100 million like hardcore fans who use Twitter, but a lot of them are moving to like platforms like Substack because they can get literally people can pay them to be part of their to them to teach. Right, the creator economy is coming. Right.
What's Substack?
A Substack is like a newsletter platform that's really becoming more popular. It's becoming more popular. So it's allowing journalists, instead of working at CNN, I can go open my own Substack, create my own newsletter, and you can pay me monthly, and I'll just you hear from me now. So instead of you buying from a newspaper, you can buy from your favorite author. So
that's
in
really
journalism,
cool.
It's really shifting how journalism works, right?
Yeah.
So there are all these things like Gumroad, all these community platforms that are coming up now that are feeding off of these big, huge platforms. So like the 2010s, like the huge social media platforms came. Now the 2030s, we're moving to creator platforms, where in the 2010s, like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, they made money off of you making posts. You made nothing. Yeah. Right. The creator economy was a net zero because the platforms made all the money. Right. Now it's about, hey, if I'm going to have ideas and tweet this, if I'm going to take an Instagram and and post this, if I'm going to go on Clubhouse and say this, how can I monetize? Right. Oh, yeah. So the rise of like the creator economy. Right. That's something I'm really interested in. So I go on podcasts and listen to how different people see how the creator economy is coming to be, what are their ideas from it. Gary Vee has a different concept. The Pivot podcast that I was listening to that had a different concept, right? A16Z has like a very technical concept. So I'm trying to research around these core themes from different perspectives. So I'm not really looking for like facts and figures to utilize. That would always be a Google search away. But I'm just looking for ideas. Like, what are people talking about? Like, what's coming up next? What are the shifts happening, right? How are people dealing with this? And all that stuff is available. So that's what I'm really interested in what we're doing right now, right? Like, there's somebody out there that's going to like come onto this and be like, I need to know how she built this legal platform, and they're looking for like information. There's going to be another, like, there's going to be a founder somewhere that's going to be working on this. They'll come across, they're working on legal tech, but might come across this, listen to this and be like, wow, like, I like how she dealt with this, get to feel some sympathy off you and maybe reach out. Right. So we've had that happen a few times in the podcast, like by recording ourselves and like putting our story out there. It's like you're creating an asset that can attract things your way. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's really cool what you do. Like the fact that you've made, I think you said I was the 138th episode. That's insane. Like, you have put in so much time into the studio, just talking to a bunch of different people, and you must have learned so much. Like, I can't even imagine all of the stories and things you've learned just from talking to people, and also building that muscle of just, creating so many podcasts.
Yeah. I mean, you hit all the value props right there, right? I could increase my skill set of talking to people, build that muscle. I'm a salesperson, but talking to people, it takes energy, there's energy that I need. So you need to work out and build it up. That's there. But two, the amount of stuff I've learned personally, right? Just from talking to people, being able to bring someone on your podcast and just like ask them any questions you want is so fulfilling, right? Because I'm just a curious dude. Like, it's not like I know everything. Rather than I just want to know random things, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's really been fueling this. But honestly, like I talk about this on Clubhouse a lot. It's like I grew up not being able to talk properly. Like
What do you
speech
mean?
speech was really hard for me, right?
Oh, like, did you have like a stutter or like?
No, just forming concepts. Like I like that. Like I used like thought too hard and like I couldn't verbalize ideas, right?
Oh,
Like
okay.
I couldn't,
Yeah.
I couldn't. You know what I mean? Like it took me a while, like to learn how to do complex thoughts and speeches, like doing speech competitions, like in high
Yeah.
school, doing pitch competitions in university. That made me like feel better. Then I got into sales, doing door-to-door sales, doing like phone sales, talking to people. It became like a muscle that I just kept working on, right? And this is full
So
circle.
I have a question for you. So now when you do sales, like, calling people, how do you feel? Like, do you not mind it at all? Do you hate any process of it, or do you just like, it's just like second nature?
I hate it. My first pitch at anything, right? I never want if I'm pitching anything, I never want it to be my first pitch, right?
Yeah.
Like the actual target that you want it to be your 10th or your 20th pitch.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So oftentimes, whenever I'm launching something new or trying to pitch something new, I purposely go after people I don't care about. Like I don't want to actually close, so we can get the practice out of the way, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's smart. That's smart.
Yeah, because like think about it, like if when you really care about something and you're trying to like make a close, like what if you suck? Like what if you forget some key things, right? Like one of the things I loved about door-to-door sales, and even what's it working at like a call center, is that the rapid amount of people you talk to. Right. The rapid learning curve. People keep calling in, or you're knocking on doors and keep talking to people. You get to practice something over and over again. Right. And by the time you get to like the 20th, 50th pitch, it becomes automated. So it's like you're not thinking about what you're pitching or selling. You're just kind of going at it. And like mentally, you're like above that, watching and looking at their reactions, what they think, you're more strategic. So it's like the words kind of flow out of you. The presentation continues. Right.
Yeah.
But like you're strategically thinking now instead of worrying about if I sound stupid or if I forgot something or what's next or like, you know what I mean? So like
you're kind of like on autopilot.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
for me, I'm like, if I'm trying to pitch something or build something, I need something that I can pitch rapidly to learn and then have something to pitch for. Right. And one of the biggest problems with that is B2B or enterprise sales, because when you have these big sales that you're in front of, there's very little room to practice.
Yeah, you really have to just give it your best shot every time.
How about you? Go ahead.
I was going to ask you, so I'm curious to know, are you introverted or extroverted, or where are you on the spectrum? Because you
I'm
said
like
you
a
get
hybrid
tired.
now. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm an introvert that looks for social settings, which I'm looking for punishment. You know what I mean? It's like I see it as like like I get like pissed off when I'm bad at something, and that anger really drives me. So like that's one of my motivations for doing things often is that I realize I'm bad at this and I hate myself for it, and I just drive myself to get better. Right. So it's like a personal thing, vendetta. Like some of my close friends, they hate this character of me because like people who meet, get really close think that I'm competing with them, because someone will hit like a milestone. If I'm doing sales or in a team culture and someone hits like a certain milestone, I'm like, shit, how am I getting there? How am I keeping up? Right. It's not like, oh, I need to be better than them. It's more like, oh man, it's a reflection on myself. What am I doing? Like, how come I'm not doing this? Right. Like, how can I be better? Right. And then I that just challenges me. And I love that energy, right? That competitive energy. When you compete with yourself, you're just competing for growth, right? You win no matter what.
Yeah.
So I like that kind of mindset. How about you? Like, how do you see sales? Like, how'd you get into it? Because it's a skill to kind of develop.
Yeah. So initially I got into it just by necessity. I mean, we needed customers. And so I felt like, I just had to go out there and talk to people. We're doing LinkedIn, but it's slower to do things over email. And it's just so much easier when you're talking to people face to face. So I think I waited a few months. I was scared. I was really scared to do it, especially because lawyers, they're really busy people and they have high egos. So not exactly the easiest market to start doing cold call pitches to. But yeah, I mean, I think I told you this in our last podcast. I think I did 1,400 calls, and then just like what you're saying, like initially I was really really scared, and then I got into it, and it just became second nature. And I watched a bunch of YouTube videos on it too, and that's how I came up with the thought of like kind of, it sounds weird, but like smiling even when you get rejected, or like enjoying it even though you don't really, like just kind of almost feeling happy about it, and just like rewiring, like I don't know if you've ever heard this, but like I learned this in school, and it was like when you're nervous to do something but then you kind of tell yourself I'm really excited, it makes it so much easier to do it. So I just told myself like, yeah, I'm really excited to do this.
Yeah.
And then eventually I did become excited. It did become more normal, and it became a lot easier. Honestly, it's just like you just get experience, and then it becomes so much easier.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was one of my motivations of this. Like the first a few times we record on the podcast, I almost threw up. Like I was like freaking
really?
out.
Yeah.
It was also the first time I had 3 4K cameras. Like this is when the physical set like pointed at me, right? And then we also, the reason we have these lights is to make it even more intense. The stage. But I quickly realized, you know what I mean? After like my 5th, 10th episodes, I'm like, I now have 10 hours experience. Most people come on this show is their first time. You know what I mean? So I have to take on a direction of like leading them through it, prepping them through it, and and then it took this natural coaching side. And now that you're doing that, it's just like, it feels like, oh, this is your show. You know, you take more ownership over it. And so that there's an element of mastery that comes with repetition, right? There's a book literally called Mastery that one of my sales managers handed to me, at one of my most high performance sales jobs.
Yeah.
And it's by somebody Green, the author. Anyway, it talks about like how to develop mastery in skills, right? There's a principle like 10,000 hours principle. If you do 10,000 hours
I've heard of that.
and gain like a particular skill set, you gain like this mastery level where you operate at a different frequency. And I thought about this, right? Like, what do I want to obtain mastery on, right? Because it's an investment, right? Like to hit 10,000 hours, that's almost like 10 years, almost a decade of worth of work, right? Unless like you're putting like a lot of time into it, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, what do I want to invest a decade into? And I'm like, it has to be people, you know? Like for me, it was people because it was the hardest thing for me, right? Communication was hard and that pissed me off. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to take this weakness and make it into something I'm masterful at. So let's do this. So
yourself.
Punish it, right? Right. And so here we are, right? Episode, I think this is more 139, but the goal now, my personal goal is to make 1,000 episodes in 1,000 days. So in about 2.9 years, I want to be able to do about 1,000 episodes. So the first benchmark actually when I started this was to do 100 episodes, right? And now it's to do 1,000. And really it's like, okay, think about how much learning that's going to come out of that. Think about how much information is going to come out of that. Think how much content is going to come out of that. There's so much interactions out of that goal, but at the same time, it's like I'm closer to that, that mastery goal, right? Where where I can, do this on the fly and get better and better. So that's currently what I'm working on.
So are you going to turn the podcast into different pieces of content? Like, how Gary Vee, like he turns like pillar content into different forms of content. Or have you thought about doing that?
So my real plan is to turn this more into almost like some kind of portal, like I want to create what we're doing right now is creating a podcast network. So we're actually creating a multi-podcast network. So we're partnering up with other podcasters. We're working with a few corporate partners that we're creating corporate partner podcasts for, all within the innovation industry. And now we're going from 1 channel to 10 channels to 20 channels. And then we're taking all that and we're creating a content hub where things lies. And soon what we're doing is we're using a few existing like open source programs, from Amazon, from AWS, from Microsoft. And what it's doing is we're dissecting the voice data. We're breaking the data down into transcripts, and then tying those transcripts to particular events. And then we're trying to script it out. So eventually down the line, I want to learn about blockchain, right? But what's happening in blockchain in like Latin America? and the system would go out and figure out, find all these snippets of when blockchain are talked about, figure out, where the concepts, and stitch together like a timeline for you of like what's
That's
happening and
amazing.
what people are talking about, what's a current updated, lens of blockchain and stuff like that. Right. So for me, I'm like, what I'm naturally doing with podcasts, listening to multiple podcasts around a certain like framework to understand something. I'm like, how can we make that more active? Rather than me going and searching and listening to many things for like that snippet of information, how can I search for that? Right? How can we make innovation searchable? So those concepts, those ideas, I can actively just get tuned to it, right?
That's really cool. That's like an audio Wikipedia type of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we call
That's
it.
actually really cool.
Yeah. So we were looking at Shazam, like a Shazam for innovation kind of thing, or like but. Yeah, like almost like an audio Wikipedia kind of thing. So we're not sure how that framework's going to look like. We're partnering with a few AI companies. We're focused on getting the media, and then our partners are going to take care of what they can, what we can build with this media, right? And there's a lot becoming possible. What I'm so thrown about is like how much free code there is that you can play around with. And there's a lot of like tools that are just built off of free codes, right? Like, there's a no code and low code revolution happening right now where you can just like interact with code and just like the tools just will build it for you. Have you ever experimented with anything like this? Low code, no code, like any of those kind of platforms?
No, honestly, I haven't. It's not really my background. I wish I did. Honestly, I should learn more into it. But yeah, what about you?
Yeah, so we are addicted to it, right? So there's two that we love. One is Airtable. Airtable is a low code like app builder. Like it's like Excel on steroids, or like Google Sheets on steroids. You can program things into it. You can automate things right off of it, right? And the second one is Bubble, which is like a no code app builder. So you can just drag and drop and make things, and you can make an app, or you can make a website.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool skill set to now look into, right? Is like, how can you use platforms that make code for you to build things?
That's really interesting. So what are you looking at building? Or is that for the podcast network, or is that for something else?
Yeah, I mean, we've been using it internally for like just processes. So things like, scheduling this, we use automations that run. So the form you filled out, that automatically sends you a Google Calendar invite. All the information is there, but also it goes into our community portal, so we can track when the episode is, when it's going to air. So then our editor knows, okay, this is when this episode is going to be made. It needs to be released by this, so he can take that. And then the same link will be sent to you, same link will be sent to me from a recording. Then the editor will have also the link to extract all the information. Like all our backend processes are becoming automated away, right? And we don't need to run. We haven't done a single piece of code. All we're doing is telling this platform, do this when this, do this and this, and slowly we're like making all our processes run just automated, just run on the fly.
That's incredible.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. So it's like a really cool skill set. It's like, okay, all these tools are out there. How can you combine these SaaS tools, integrations, and automations, and make things just run by itself? Yeah. I mean, kind of like what you're doing for the legal industry, right? Like, I think like the next iteration on top of this is building some automation tools on top of this, right? So
yeah. Well, the thing is, it's interesting because some people, like some lawyers, think that we automate the process. And I guess that's good and that's bad, because it's also like an art, like cross-examination is an art. So people think like, oh, it's a bad thing if it's automated, because I don't get to use, some people really enjoy the process of building questions and they don't want a robot to do it for them. On the other hand, it would be really cool if it could actually like kind of come up with suggestions. So yeah, it's interesting. We've definitely like heard people ask us before, like, oh, is this automated?
Yeah, I mean, you also mentioned that part of the tool set is like you provide like templates and playbooks, right? Especially for new lawyers on how to operate. That's a very valuable case right there, right? Do you see that evolving more into like a content library of like, hey, this is how you can use this to do this, or do you see it more like, like something that's more deployable, where it's like, the plug and play option. This allows you to do this. Like,
I see it becoming a content library. Because right now, for example, we have a lot of blogs on our site saying, okay, this is how you deal with a witness if they're a police officer. This is how you deal with a witness if they're a child. There's specific patterns that you can pull out from different types of cases that you can reuse and recycle. Imagine if you had a database of those patterns that new lawyers can look at. It's a complete game changer. So I see us 100% in the future having kind of a database for if it's a DUI case, then click on this template and it will be more curated for you, because DUI cases are similar, or they're more similar than a different criminal, like a sexual offense crime. And so 100%, I think that's definitely in the future for Aleri, is to become more of a database, because our goal is to amalgamate or bring together litigation best practices, and that would be a portion of that.
That's awesome. I like that direction, and that analytics kind of aspect of it. I can definitely see the value set in that. Cool, Jenushika. I mean, this has been great. It's the first time, like I said, us having to redo an episode. Thank you for the patience. Thank you for coming back on. Really enjoyed you, sharing your journey. Thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me, Ravi. No, honestly, I love being on here. You're a super nice guy. You are definitely an expert, have tons of knowledge. It was my pleasure joining the podcast. So thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Stick around. We'll do a quick debrief. But for everyone who joined us, thanks for listening.